One day, a colossal tower materialized in the heart of the city, heralding what many believed to be the end of the world. Some called it the apocalypse, others labeled it a catastrophe, but while debates raged on, the tower itself spoke, sending a message to humanity. It beckoned those willing to fight to answer its summons, offering a grim ultimatum: respond, or face annihilation. A select few, brave or desperate enough to heed the call, took up the challenge. These individuals, later known as Tower Walkers, were prepared to sacrifice everything for the survival of humanity. However, the tower had not called them in vain. No sooner had they responded than a horde of monsters surged forth from its depths, intent on crushing the walkers before they could even begin their ascent. But amidst the chaos, one man stood tall. His determination to survive was unshakable, and with a single, decisive blow, he brought down the creatures that sought to destroy them. In the aftermath of the battle, the walkers discovered a mysterious artifact left behind by the slain monsters, a regression stone. This stone held incredible power, offering a way to rewind time, sending its user back to the moment the tower first appeared, with their memories fully intact. Intriguingly, the stone could also be divided and shared among the group. The man who claimed the regression stone was eager to test its abilities. As he activated the stone, it burst into a radiant light, so bright that the other tower walkers shielded their eyes. When the light subsided, the man was gone. His companions were left in awe, unsure whether he had succeeded in traveling back in time or had simply vanished into oblivion. Their doubts were soon replaced by panic as the tower unleashed another wave of monsters, catching the remaining walkers off guard. Wounded and terrified, they realized the gravity of their situation. One by one, they made the difficult decision to use their fragments of the regression stone, choosing to escape the immediate danger and return to the past. The constant dread of death weighed heavily on them, making the option of a fresh start seem far more appealing than continuing their ascent. As they reappeared in the familiar surroundings of the dungeon's entrance, more tower walkers began to arrive, having made the same choice. One of them sighed in relief, noting how the group had dwindled. Another grimly observed that they might be among the last ones still willing to face the tower's perils head-on. With the knowledge of what awaited them, they steeled themselves for the inevitable challenges that lay ahead, now armed with the bitter experience of their first encounter. The chance to turn back time offered them the opportunity to correct their deepest regrets and reverse their most devastating failures. However, just as they began to embrace this second chance, a powerful monster suddenly materialized. Without hesitation, the group attacked, managing to bring the beast down after a fierce battle. Once the dust settled, Jae-hwan, catching his breath, called out to his companion, Yunwan, telling him to leave the battlefield. When no response came, Jae-hwan turned to check on him and was horrified by the sight before him. Yunwan was slumped against a pillar, gravely injured, clutching the regression stone in his trembling hand. Rushing to his side, Jae-hwan stood beside his comrade, a sinking feeling settling in his chest. "Did you use it?" he asked, his voice barely steady. Yunwan, with a weak smile, apologized. Although many of their comrades had opted to return to the past, few had considered the consequences of abandoning the world they left behind. Before Jae-hwan could process his emotions, an ominous rumble echoed through the air, and a massive door began to creak open before them. Jae-hwan, stunned by the sight, hesitated as he crossed the threshold. He couldn't shake the growing sense of finality and wondered if this was the point of no return. As soon as he entered, a disembodied voice echoed through the chamber, praising him for his determination. "You are quite extraordinary, Jae-hwan. No one has ever attempted to reach the 99th floor of the tower alone." His eyes darted around, searching for the source of the voice, but his attention was soon drawn to the enormous creature looming ahead, the guardian of the 99th floor. He questioned whether this would be the end for him, whether he would get the chance to return to the past once more. But without hesitation, he gripped his sword, ready to face whatever lay ahead. With a surge of confidence, he vowed to continue climbing the tower, no matter the odds. Meanwhile, within the depths of the Nightmare Tower, the Demon Lord, ruler of this twisted realm, watched a recording of Jae-hwan and his team battling the monster. A sinister grin spread across his face as he observed Jae-hwan's skill and tenacity. "I'm about to acquire something valuable," the demon muttered, his eyes gleaming with anticipation. Back in the past, few moments before the towers appeared, the man casually reached for a packet of chips while listening to the latest news broadcast about the unusual weather conditions caused by a recent surge of yellow dust. As he fumbled with the packet, it tore open unexpectedly, sending chips scattering across the floor. Startled, he looked up, only to meet the curious eyes of a little girl beside him. "Did you steal those chips?" she asked innocently, her eyes narrowing as if she suspected him of foul play. She loved those chips, and her tone reflected her disappointment. Quickly, the protagonist knelt to pick up the spilled chips, offering a flustered explanation. No, it wasn't me. The packet was already opened, he said, trying to reassure her as he gathered the crumbs. Just as he was about to calm the situation, the news anchor on TV suddenly broke into a serious report, advising the public to avoid outdoor activities due to worsening air quality. The man's attention shifted to the screen, and his expression tightened. A breaking news headline flashed across, drawing him in. Whatever was happening, it demanded his full attention. The news reported that a minor earthquake had struck just outside Seoul. Though there were no casualties, experts warned that the tremors were intensifying with each passing moment. Seismologists cautioned the public, urging immediate preventative measures as the likelihood of a larger quake increased. As the protagonist listened, the floor beneath him began to tremble. Alarmed, he glanced outside, paying closer attention to the news. Around him, other shoppers were also growing uneasy, glancing at each other as the vibrations continued to escalate. Suddenly, the government issued emergency warnings, announcing strict precautions to prevent casualties in response to the tremors. The situation took a drastic turn when, outside the mart, the ground shook violently, sending a ripple of panic through the crowd. Amidst the chaos, the earth split open, and an enormous tower erupted from beneath, its towering structure looming ominously over the city. People gasped in terror, their fear quickly turning into screams as they tried to comprehend what was happening. In the midst of the pandemonium, the protagonist instinctively pulled the little girl close, shielding her from the falling debris. Overwhelmed by the destruction around her, the child began to sob uncontrollably, her small frame shaking with fear. The once familiar mart had been reduced to rubble, its structure completely devastated by the quake. Nearby, a man called out, checking if anyone was hurt. He reassured the survivors that emergency services had been contacted and that help was on the way. Turning his attention back to the little girl in his arms, the protagonist gently asked if she was all right. Her tear-filled eyes gazed up at him, and with a small nod, she whispered that she was fine. Then, with a shaky voice, she asked about the tower that had suddenly appeared outside the shattered mart. "What is that?" she asked, her voice filled with confusion and fear as she looked at the colossal structure dominating the skyline. Meanwhile, reports started flooding in from around the globe. Towers identical to the one in Seoul had appeared in major cities like London and Tokyo. These massive, mysterious structures seemed to rise out of nowhere, leaving the world in shock. As people struggled to comprehend the situation, the name "Nightmare Towers" began circulating, describing the unsettling nature of these giant monuments that had thrust the world into a state of terror. They all received the same message, congratulating them for being chosen to become tower walkers, tasked with saving the world. Each was given a choice: accept the call and face the unknown, or refuse and remain a bystander. The man, without fully understanding what it meant to be a tower walker, decided to accept. However, his curiosity quickly turned into disbelief as the truth unfolded before him. Those who responded to the tower's summons were equipped for battle by a strange system interface, which granted them weapons and abilities, much like characters in a video game. However, it didn't take long for them to realize this was no game, it was real, and the stakes were life and death. As they processed what was happening, a sudden alert appeared on their screens, warning them that a towering impact was about to hit their world. Their shock deepened as they watched live footage of people outside the tower, construction workers who had been obliviously going about their tasks. The workers had noticed a figure perched on one of the tower's doors and, at first, mistook it for a person. Concerned for the individual's safety, they called out, warning them to get down from the dangerous height, and even asked someone nearby to call 911. But their concern quickly turned to horror. The figure revealed itself to be no human, it was a monster. Its wings unfurled, its grotesque claws extended, and its mouth opened, exposing rows of sharp, jagged teeth. The creature let out an ear-splitting roar that echoed through the city. Before anyone could react, the monster, which was evidently a boss of some kind, summoned an army of goblins and other grotesque creatures that appeared behind it, charging straight at the helpless workers and bystanders. This was the tower impact, when monsters spill from the tower into the world, wreaking havoc. Alarms blared across the city as chaos erupted. The creatures swarmed the streets, destroying everything in their path as people scrambled to flee for their lives. The military was dispatched quickly. Tanks rolled into the area, their cannons aimed at the monsters. However, despite their efforts, the sheer number of creatures overwhelmed them. The monsters were relentless, spreading like wildfire across the city. No matter how many were killed, more seemed to emerge from the tower's dark portals, making it nearly impossible to regain control of the situation. Panic gripped the city as the tower walkers, now realizing the gravity of their new roles, prepared to face this monstrous invasion. They were humanity's last hope, standing between the world and complete destruction. In the aftermath of the monster invasion, a devastating third of the global population was wiped out. Those watching from the tower were powerless, forced to witness the destruction unfold below. The memory of the message they had received haunted them, reminding them that they were meant to be the ones to save the world, the Tower Walkers. Shocked and overwhelmed, they couldn't shake the weight of their mission. Determined to make a difference, the Tower Walkers resolved to ascend the tower. Despite the staggering odds, they clung to the hope that their only way to end this nightmare was to conquer the tower itself. If this is what we have to do to save the world, then let's do it, they thought. Armed with extraordinary abilities and weapons, they pressed forward, fully aware that they were humanity's last defense against complete annihilation. As they ascended higher, they faced formidable monsters, defeating each one with growing confidence. Eventually, they reached a massive stone blocking their path, its immense size sealing off the entrance to the next level. Frustration settled in as some of them doubted their ability to break through, but one among them insisted that they could smash their way past it. His optimism seemed foolish to others at first. This was no ordinary obstacle. Still, with little choice, they decided to try. To their astonishment, their efforts worked. Using their weapons, they chipped away at the boulder, clearing a path forward. As the dust settled, one of the tower walkers noticed something sparkling within the rubble. He called over his senior, pointing to the mysterious item glowing beneath the debris. Intrigued, they carefully examined the shimmering object and were stunned to discover that it was a powerful artifact, the regression stone. Its ability to turn back time left them in awe. The thought of undoing their mistakes and preventing the destruction they had witnessed seemed almost too good to be true. Their leader, Incan Huang, gathered everyone together, his expression serious. He proposed that he would use the stone first and report back on what happened. The others agreed, their curiosity and hope growing. With a determined look, Incan prepared to activate the regression stone, ready to test its power and potentially rewrite the fate of the world. In a blinding flash of light, their leader vanished before their eyes, leaving them in stunned disbelief. They couldn't wrap their minds around what had just happened. Incan Huang had completely disappeared. Although they knew the regression stone had sent him back in time, the group still found it hard to accept that he was no longer present with them. Many of them hoped he would return soon, unable to fathom the idea of their leader being truly gone. Sakamoto, a former science teacher, adjusted his glasses and calmly analyzed the situation. He explained that Incan Huang wouldn't be returning to their timeline, at least not in the way they expected. According to Sakamoto, the moment Incan activated the regression stone, their timeline had split into a parallel one, separating their worlds forever. Sakamoto, drawing on theories of the multiverse and parallel dimensions, reasoned that once Incan went back in time, their paths diverged completely, and they would never meet him again. His explanation left the group bewildered. The complexity of the science behind it went over their heads, evident in their confused expressions. Sakamoto noticed their puzzlement and reassured them, saying that whether they fully understood it or not, one thing was clear: Incan had successfully traveled back in time. But despite his journey to the past, their present remained unchanged. The timeline they were in would still face the threat of destruction. Sakamoto continued, stating that although he trusted the tower's items, and the regression stone had certainly worked, there was no guarantee that each person using it would end up in same timelines. It was possible, though unconfirmed, that those who used the regression stone might land in the same timeline. The truth was, they couldn't be certain about anything when it came to the mysterious items from the tower. Everything about them defied logic and their understanding of reality. As they processed this unsettling information, a second tower impact struck the outside world. Monsters poured forth once more, wreaking havoc as they sought to wipe out the remaining pockets of humanity. Chaos reigned outside the tower, and the world teetered on the brink of collapse as the tower walkers contemplated their next move in the face of this ongoing catastrophe. The tower walkers were faced with an impossible decision: either use the regression stone to escape to the past or stay and face certain death. The situation inside the tower had devolved into absolute chaos, with destruction spreading everywhere and the monsters mercilessly slaughtering those who tried to fight them. Cries for help echoed through the chambers, but hope was all but extinguished. One of the tower walkers, already feeling the weight of defeat, accepted that their end was near. His companion agreed, believing that their lives were as good as over. Seeing no other way, one of them apologized to the remaining fighters and, with a heavy heart, used the regression stone to travel back in time, leaving the others behind. The last tower walker, left alone, knelt before the towering monster, prepared to be consumed by it. Just when he thought his fate was sealed, a man armed with dual daggers appeared out of nowhere. With swift and precise strikes, he took down the beast. The tower walker, shocked and unable to comprehend what had just happened, stared at the mysterious fighter. The man turned, smiled, and asked if he was all right. Barely able to respond, the tower walker nodded, still in disbelief. Looking around, he realized that his former companions had abandoned him. Anger and frustration surged through him as he cursed them for leaving him behind. But his anger faded when his new team arrived, rescuing him from the brink of death. With tears in his eyes, he thanked them for saving his life, while they commended him for his courage in standing his ground. These tower walkers, who had resisted the temptation of the regression stone, were now the last hope for humanity. Unlike those who had fled to the past, they chose to fight for the present, determined to put an end to the nightmare and protect what was left of the world. Later, Yunhuan lay on the ground, panting and struggling to take his final breaths. His vision blurred as he could barely make out Jaehuan's face above him. Nearby, Jaehuan was slumped against a wall, grievously wounded, questioning how everything had gone so wrong. His mind drifted back to the moment when he and Yunhuan had defeated a monster together, but the memory was tainted by the image of the same monster launching a vicious attack on Yunhuan. Yunhuan, realizing the danger they were in, charged at the monstrous beast to divert its attention. He shouted for Jaehuan to strike while the creature was distracted. Without hesitation, Jaehuan leaped from above, reassuring his companion that he was fully prepared for the battle. Gripping his sword tightly, he swung down with precision and declared it was the monster's end. With a swift, powerful strike, he cleanly severed the creature's head, bringing it down in one decisive blow. After the battle, Jaehuan quickly checked on his comrades, asking if there had been any casualties. Thankfully, Yunhuan reported that, this time, no one had perished. He added that the injured fighters would recover soon with some rest. Feeling optimistic, Yunhuan remarked that if they could continue like this, they might actually reach the final floor of the tower. Together, they made their way back to where the rest of the group had gathered. The healer was tending to the wounded, and upon seeing Jaehuan and Yunhuan return, their fellow tower walkers waved at them in relief. Both men waved back, feeling a sense of camaraderie and victory. As they settled in, Jaehuan's gaze was drawn to an unfamiliar sword lying on the ground. Curious, he approached it and examined its details. The weapon was named Wormsbane, a blade sharpened for 1,000 days and nights by Beongwei, the guardian of the 85th floor. It had been crafted specifically to slay dragons and was imbued with the power of both the sun and the moon. Delighted by this unexpected treasure, Jaehuan picked up the sword, feeling confident that it would greatly enhance their chances of survival. He remembered what Yunhuan had said about finding stronger weapons and felt more certain than ever that they could conquer the final floors. Everything seemed to be falling into place, and for a moment, the group dared to believe they might actually complete the climb. But as Jaehuan stood in the chamber of hellfire on the 98th floor, all hope began to slip away. He gazed in horror at the monstrous beast before him, a towering creature capable of unleashing torrents of molten lava that consumed everything in its path. His companions had already fallen, burned alive by the scorching heat. The monster's flames were so intense they melted metal weapons within seconds. Jaehuan stood frozen, alone, realizing the gravity of the situation and wondering how everything had gone so wrong so quickly. The protagonist, still reeling from the shock of seeing his comrades fall, was suddenly assaulted by the monster, its sheer force hurling him violently against the wall. The impact was brutal, knocking the wind out of him and causing blood to spill from his mouth. Dizzy and disoriented, he slumped to the ground, overwhelmed by the crushing weight of defeat. In that moment, the grim reality hit him: everything they had fought for, all the sacrifices and struggles climbing the tower together, now seemed utterly meaningless. The hope they had clung to, the belief that they could save the world, felt like a cruel joke as the monster loomed closer. Paralyzed, the protagonist watched in terror as the creature opened its gaping maw, preparing to unleash a torrent of molten lava. For the first time, he felt completely helpless. But just as the beast was about to strike, Yunhuan appeared out of nowhere, launching a flurry of attacks against the monster, desperately trying to fend it off. Yunhuan called out to the protagonist, snapping him back to awareness. Realizing his comrade was in grave danger, the protagonist leaped to his feet, rushing forward to help. Yunhuan fought valiantly, but the monster was relentless. Despite his efforts, he was struck by the creature's sharp horn, sending him crashing to the ground. Seeing his comrade injured infuriated the protagonist, filling him with a fiery determination to protect Yunhuan at all costs. The monster, now carrying Yunhuan's limp body, tried to flee, but the protagonist was not about to let it escape. Grabbing his sword, he charged after the beast. As he ran, something extraordinary happened. A glowing string of light extended from his sword, wrapping itself around the monster's horn. The protagonist was momentarily stunned, unsure of what this strange light was or how it had come to be. But there was no time to ponder. his priority was taking down the monster. With renewed vigor, the protagonist tightened his grip on the sword and pulled, dragging the creature back toward him. The struggle was fierce, but after a series of calculated strikes, he finally managed to bring the monster down. Exhausted but victorious, he rushed to Yunwan's side. The wounds Yunwan sustained were deep, and the protagonist's heart sank as he saw the regression stone clutched tightly in Yunwan's hand. Shocked, he asked what his friend was planning to do with it. Yunwan, his voice weak, simply apologized. Despite the grim atmosphere in the tower, Yunwan Kim always carried a cheerful demeanor, earning him the nickname Smiling Knight from his fellow tower walkers. His positive energy was a source of comfort for everyone around him, but for the first time, that signature smile was gone. The weight of their dire situation had finally broken through his optimism. The protagonist, sensing Yunwan's internal struggle, urged him to leave, telling him to go before he changed his mind. Yunwan hesitated, shocked that the protagonist had noticed the regression stone he was holding. It was as if his intentions had been laid bare, and the reality of his cowardice hit him hard. With a weary sigh and his body barely holding up, he turned to go. As he ascended the staircase, a bittersweet feeling washed over him. He realized how strong Jaehwan had become, far stronger than he had anticipated. If anyone could make it to the top of this cursed tower, it would be Jaehwan. That thought gave Yunwan some peace, knowing that even if he couldn't continue, the world had someone capable of saving it. Reaching the top of the stairs, Yunwan jumped out of a nearby window, his thoughts heavy with guilt and admiration. Meanwhile, the protagonist arrived at the next floor, placing his hand on the stone door to begin the next stage of his battle. Memories of his fallen comrades flashed in his mind, giving him the resolve to keep going. As the door creaked open, he was taken aback. The floor was encased in solid stone, a barren and unwelcoming place. Undeterred, he continued his ascent and found himself on the 99th floor. An intense gust of wind greeted him as he stepped forward, but he pressed on. The floor's guardian, a colossal ice monster, attacked him relentlessly. Despite the harsh conditions and numerous assaults, the protagonist dodged the creature's strikes, refusing to back down. The ice monster sneered, impressed that the rat-like human had the audacity to keep going. Covered in snow and frost, the protagonist remained determined, taunting the monster, asking if it was tired of their fight yet. In response, the creature lunged at him once more, its attacks filled with icy fury. Later, the protagonist found temporary refuge in an ice cave, desperately trying to stay out of the monster's sight. He stuffed a piece of cloth into his mouth to muffle his breathing while using whatever warmth he could muster to thaw the ice that had formed on his arm. Outside, the creature prowled, its booming voice echoing as it mocked him. Hiding again? How predictable, it rumbled, thinking the protagonist's efforts to stay alive were futile. But Jaehwan wasn't ready to give up, not yet. Jaehwan huddled inside the icy cave, his heart pounding as he strained to stay hidden from the looming threat outside. He wasn't in any shape to face the creature yet, he needed time to recover. It had been a decade since he first set foot on the 99th floor, and the danger here was on a completely different level compared to anything he'd encountered before. The trials of the 98th floor, though brutal, paled in comparison to what awaited him now. The floor's guardian, Frostworm Belchisis, the ice dragon from the Forgotten Land, was a terrifying force. Its freezing breath could penetrate even the strongest cold resistance, making it almost impossible to endure. Jaehwan knew that if it weren't for the gear left behind by tower walkers who had either fallen or retreated, he wouldn't have survived this long. The suppressing dragon sword, a relic from the 85th floor, had saved his life more times than he could count. His ice demon armor, gifted by Yun Aikwan, and the Flame King's bracelet from Han Seo Yeol, were his final lifelines. As he gazed at the bracelet on his wrist, memories of Han Seo Yeol flooded his mind. He closed his eyes, feeling her presence lingering around him, and whispered an apology. He blamed himself for not being more decisive back then, believing that if he had acted more swiftly, he could have saved her when she was attacked. The guilt gnawed at him, even after all these years. His thoughts drifted to a time in the reclaimed village of Adipose, a settlement they had secured after defeating the 50th floor boss, Altaminus. There, he'd spent time healing and reflecting on his journey. One day, while deep in thought, he had been interrupted by Jay, the village's blacksmith. Planning to challenge it again? Jay had asked, a knowing look in his eyes. Jaehwan had nodded. This time, for sure, he had replied, sipping the tea Jay had made for him, a warmth spreading through his weary body. Jay had been relieved to hear it. Despite the daily influx of injured or fallen walkers, the village had never lost hope. They had forged a community out of the chaos, and the priests had even set up emergency rescue teams for those too wounded to continue. The blacksmiths of Oedipus had long dedicated themselves to crafting gear for the tower walkers, forging weapons and armor without asking for a single coin in return, all for the sake of humanity's survival. But those days seemed to be slipping away. Jae-hwan, now seated across from Jae, the last remaining blacksmith in the village, couldn't help but notice the emptiness of the workshop. Jae was sharpening a blade, his hand steady but his expression tired. "You're the only one left now, aren't you?" Jae-hwan asked, a hint of sadness in his voice. Jae grimaced, clearly not wanting to be reminded. "You've been my only customer for a while," Jae muttered, glancing up from his work. "And it's not like there's much I can make anymore. Supplies from the lower floors have stopped coming. No more ores. A few months ago, I could still scrounge up some minerals, but now, it's all dried up." Jae-hwan nodded, not surprised by the news. The tower had nearly claimed the entirety of humanity. He wasn't sure how long it had been, he had lost track of time, but he was certain more than 10 tower impacts had occurred since he began his climb. From some point onward, new walkers had ceased to appear on the lower floors. It was as if Earth itself had been wiped out, leaving no one left to ascend the tower. "Do you think there's anyone left on Earth?" Jae-hwan asked quietly, his eyes meeting Jae's. Jae paused, then shrugged. "Who knows? But it's strange, isn't it? Even though the tower's the same as always, doesn't it feel different?" Jae-hwan frowned, suddenly recalling something odd he had seen during his last journey up the tower. "Now that you mention it, I did notice something," he admitted. "There were strange scribbles near the place where I found a returned stone. Words that didn't make sense, something about a tower within a tower, and a nightmare within a nightmare." Jae's hammer halted mid-strike as he stared at Jae-hwan, clearly disturbed by the revelation. "What does that even mean?" he muttered. "I have no idea," Jae-hwan replied, shaking his head. "At first, I thought it was just someone's random scrawls, but now, I'm not so sure." Before Jae-hwan could dwell on it further, Jae mentioned something else that made his stomach drop. "Grandmother Hylene disappeared 2 days ago," Jae said, his voice tinged with concern. "No one's seen her since." Jae-hwan stiffened. Everyone knew that people in the tower didn't age, so there were only 2 possibilities for someone disappearing: either they had used a regression stone or they had jumped off the tower. Neither option boded well for Hylene. She and Jae were among the few support-type walkers left in Oedipus, and losing her would be a heavy blow. Jae's hammer struck the anvil with a loud clang as he seemed to lose himself in thought, his worry for the missing grandmother evident. Jae-hwan sat in silence for a moment, contemplating what to do. After a long pause, he turned to Jae with a firm resolve in his eyes. "Teach me the blacksmithing skill," Jae-hwan said suddenly. Jae froze, shocked by the request. "What?" he asked, bewildered. "I want to learn how to forge weapons," Jae-hwan repeated. "I don't know how much longer we have, and I can't rely on others for this. If supplies are running out and people are disappearing, I need to know how to make my own weapons. Teach me." Jae stared at him, still in disbelief, before slowly nodding. "You're serious, huh?" he said with a sigh. "All right then. But don't expect it to be easy." Jae-hwan smiled faintly. "Nothing in this tower ever is." Jae-hwan returned to the 99th floor, where the massive ice dragon, Velchicus, awaited him. As soon as he appeared, Velchicus let out a low, rumbling chuckle. "Are you done with your little game of hide-and-seek, human?" the dragon taunted. His voice echoed across the frozen expanse, sharp like the frost in the air. "No human has ever reached this floor alone since the tower was created. Yet, here you are, by yourself." Velchicus' icy eyes narrowed in amusement. "You are truly remarkable, Jae-hwan." A smirk tugged at the corner of Jae-hwan's lips. "Funny," he mused, his voice laced with sarcasm. "The only thing to acknowledge me isn't even human. Go figure." He stared at the massive beast, a sense of emptiness washing over him. "Killing you will probably leave me feeling hollow, though. You're the only one left who recognizes my strength." Velchicus paused, surprised at the human's words. "You are mistaken, Jae-hwan," the dragon replied. "A mere human like you cannot possibly defeat me alone." But Jae-hwan was undeterred. He gripped his sword tighter, the cold steel glinting in the dim light of the frozen chamber. "Is that so?" Jae-hwan asked, a fierce confidence burning in his eyes. "Then explain why you're so certain of your victory." He motioned to his armor, once pristine but now showing signs of wear. Cracks ran along the surface, thin fissures that threatened to break apart at any moment. The sight of it made Velchicus roar in anger, realizing how close this arrogant human had pushed him. "Enough of this!" Velchicus bellowed. "No more games." The dragon reared back, opening its massive jaws. A torrent of icy breath gathered in his throat, preparing to unleash it upon Jae-hwan. But the protagonist didn't flinch. He sprinted toward the beast, his sword gleaming as he aimed for the dragon's mouth. The battle was fierce. Blood dripped from the wounds inflicted by the ice spikes that had lashed across Jaewon's arm, but he continued to fight. Velchis, watching his opponent's persistence, shook his head in disbelief. Why do you continue, human? Your fate is sealed. Even if you survive this fight, what awaits you is only solitude and emptiness. There is nothing left for you beyond this floor. As the dragon spoke, the ice surrounding the battlefield began to shift. From within the crystals, arms of frozen figures reached out toward Jaewon, as if calling to him. Faces formed in the ice, faces twisted in sorrow, tears frozen on their cheeks. Jaewon's expression darkened. You talk too much, he growled, and with a swift, decisive strike, he shattered the ice figures that tried to hold him back. The shards of ice scattered around him as he broke free, rushing forward to confront Velchis once again. With renewed fury, Jaewon pressed on, charging toward the dragon with a relentless determination. His eyes locked on his foe, and in that moment, nothing else mattered but the strike that would end this battle. After their back and forth, the dragon Velchis was stunned to see yet another powerful thrust from Jaewon. With a haughty tone, Velchis scoffed, "Is that all you've got? Give it up. You can't bring me down with that skill alone." Jaewon, however, wasn't about to give up. He charged forward, determined to defeat the dragon. Unlike others, he had started his climb later, meaning he missed many hidden skills and rare classes along the way. Accepting this, he chose to specialize in just one technique, the thrust. And he had perfected it. His relentless focus allowed him to refine this one attack to an almost unimaginable degree. After slaying over 50 million monsters with his thrust, it had become a part of him. His companions often joked that thrust was his true name, and some even wondered if he had been a wasp in a previous life. Jaewon felt something changing within him. His thrusts were becoming faster, more precise, and far stronger. His relentless training had transformed the thrust from a mere motion into a lethal force, a power that now rivaled hidden skills. He felt no fatigue using it, as it didn't drain any spirit power, it was pure physical prowess. Still, despite his mastery, this opponent was no ordinary foe. Even with countless strikes, he had only managed to scratch the dragon. Velchis opened his jaws, preparing to unleash his devastating breath attack. Jaewon's instinct screamed at him that it was too late to dodge. But then, unexpectedly, a shimmering light shot out and wrapped around the dragon's mouth, binding it tightly. Jaewon recognized the glow. It was the same light he had seen on the 98th floor when it restrained that boss's horn. With this opportunity, he gripped his sword with both hands and launched himself at Velchis. Jaewon struck with all his might, slicing into the dragon's mouth, then swiftly withdrew. The dragon staggered back, momentarily stunned, while Jaewon assessed the damage. He had expected his strike to shatter the dragon's jaw completely, but Velchis remained defiant, his fierce eyes blazing with fury. "Impressive, human, but don't get carried away after a lucky blow," Velchis sneered, his voice thick with anger. He prepared to retaliate, intent on ending the fight for good. But Jaewon was ready to press on, knowing he had only begun to show the true extent of his power. The dragon soared into the air, taking a deep inhale before unleashing a torrent of icy breath toward Jaewon. He dodged skillfully, evading each attack, but the dragon's strikes intensified, blanketing the mid-air space and making it nearly impossible to avoid. Realizing that he couldn't keep this up much longer, Jaewon stumbled as he scrambled to get away. The ice dragon loomed over him, chuckling. "Too bad for you," it said. "If only there were 10 more humans like you, maybe you'd have had a chance." Jaewon grit his teeth in frustration. "Enough with the gloating," he snarled, eyeing the dragon's dangling chin. "You can barely hold yourself together?" But the dragon's gaze darkened as it spoke again. "Had your kind not been deceived by the dream demon stone, you wouldn't be in this pitiful state. A shame humans don't know of it." Jaewon's eyes widened at the mention of the dream demon stone. "What do you mean by that?" he demanded. But Velchis remained silent, unleashing another barrage of attacks. Seizing his moment, Jaewon darted toward the gate and slipped through just in time, collapsing against the door, gasping for air. One claw swipe away from death, he was relieved to have escaped. In the aftermath, he couldn't shake off the dragon's words. Dream Demon Stone? What did it mean, and why had the dragon mentioned it? 5 years passed on the 99th floor. Eventually, Jaewon stood victorious over Velchis, receiving a flood of notifications as his efforts paid off. He had earned the title of the 99th floor Nightmare, with his level and attributes, stamina, martial ability, and dexterity, all maxed out. Sitting atop the defeated dragon's body, he sighed, scrolling through the myriad of pop-ups filling his vision. As Velchis's form began to dissipate, leaving behind only a few drops of blood and an item, Jaewon leaned in and asked once more, "What did you mean about the Dream Demon Stone?" The dragon's fading eyes met his. "You already know the answer, human. The truth awaits you at the final floor, it replied, before fading into nothingness. Jaehwan glanced at the item dropped by Velchis, examining it closely. The item's description revealed it was the Ice Dragon sword, imbued with Velchis' chilling breath. It would only reveal its blade when its wielder's fighting spirit was ignited. Though it was supposed to be a sword, it looked more like a dagger to him. As he held it, the dragon's blood suddenly floated up, coalescing to form a pathway. Startled, Jaehwan looked ahead and saw a massive door with the number 100 emblazoned on top. This had to be the final floor. Steeling himself, he entered. But as soon as he passed through, the number on the door morphed, revealing a new title, Control Room. The change sent a chill down his spine. As he ventured deeper into the chamber, he was confronted by a massive screen displaying images of grandmother Hylene, their shops, and a panoramic view of the tower. He could see everything from the summoning grounds to Oedipus. Jaehwan was stunned. Was this how the tower appeared now? Suddenly, an unfamiliar voice echoed behind him, musing aloud at how quickly Jaehwan had arrived. The speaker expressed surprise, assuming Jaehwan would have returned to the village first. Alarmed, Jaehwan whirled around, sword in hand, only to find himself alone. The disembodied voice chuckled, assuring him there was no need for alarm. Apologizing for the unexpected intrusion, the voice explained that it had neglected to broadcast an essential message. It invited him to relax, acknowledging the control room's appearance might be deceiving. Though grand on the outside, it was quite antique and finicky to operate. Then, a notification flashed before Jaehwan, congratulating him on clearing one of World 294's tutorial games. The message informed him that his feat was inscribed into the undying Akashic records, a record only accessible to the monarchs of the Great Land. Jaehwan's achievements would be remembered, and his heart raced at the thought of what awaited him next. Jaehwan stared at the message, utterly dumbfounded. Tutorial? He wondered, struggling to grasp its meaning. Memories of his fallen comrades flashed before his eyes, and a chilling thought crossed his mind: if this was just a tutorial, what would the real challenge look like? The shock was so intense that he almost lost his footing. Just then, a figure materialized before him. The imposing creature, a towering beast with the face of a lion, observed Jaehwan with a mixture of amusement and pity. Was that revelation too much to handle? The creature asked, sounding almost apologetic. I know it's a lot to process, but I didn't want you spiraling into despair. For a mere human, you've done quite well. The monster looked surprised, though, as he noticed Jaehwan's expression shift from shock to defiance far sooner than expected. Jaehwan had recovered quickly, and his gaze was now fixed on the beast, burning with questions. Who are you? Jaehwan demanded, his voice laced with anger. And what's with all this nonsense? The creature chuckled, clearly delighted by Jaehwan's resilience. Forgive my excitement, he said. I haven't even introduced myself. I'm Beastrain, the devil, and the master of the Tower of Nightmares that you've just conquered. I never expected a human to reach the 100th floor alone. It's unprecedented. Jaehwan's mind raced with questions. You said this was a tutorial. Does that mean the real game hasn't even begun? Beastrain smirked, impressed by Jaehwan's quick grasp of the situation. Indeed, you're quick to understand, he replied. But before I explain further, there's something I want you to see. With a flick of Beastrain's finger, multiple screens appeared, displaying scenes from various tower climbers. One clip after another showed people's first steps into the tower, their expressions ranging from awe to fear. Jaehwan watched as the scenes shifted, recognizing familiar faces. There was Xiao Yul, looking bewildered as he first encountered the tower's door, and Yun Huan, suggesting that they'd be better off as a team of 3. Another video appeared, showing Jaehwan himself, standing among fellow walkers and introducing himself. I'm Jaehwan, from Seoul, Korea, he had said, holding his sword with a hint of pride. Beastrain glanced at Jaehwan, his tone almost nostalgic. They looked so full of hope, didn't they? Those early days are something else. The sight of his comrades as they had once been, alive, eager, and ready, made Jaehwan's heart clench. Beastrain was visibly moved as he watched the faces of those long-gone flicker across the screen. He seemed almost nostalgic, his gaze lingering on the ambush scenes, where monsters had descended upon Jaehwan and his allies. A particular gleam lit up Beastrain's eyes as the video of Xiao Yul appeared, capturing the moment she had called out to Jaehwan. He mused that they hadn't anticipated what was coming next, a revelation as chilling as it was tragic. Then, the screen transitioned to a gut-wrenching scene, Xiao Yul lying motionless, Jaehwan cradling her, tears streaming down his face as he pleaded with her to open her eyes. Beastrain's face was filled with a perverse kind of satisfaction. Tragic, isn't it? He murmured, his voice betraying a hint of amusement. I must admit, I cried too when I first saw that. As the video continued, showing Yunhuan's tearful apology to Jaehuan, Beast Rain turned to him, his expression almost taunting. So, do you remember them now? All those faces, all that pain. Do you feel anger? Sadness? Regret? He asked, his tone filled with mock sympathy. I know these feelings can seem pointless in the face of the past, but I'm willing to give you a chance. Jaehuan raised his head, disbelief and confusion plain on his face. Beast Rain's wicked grin widened. What if you could start over, he proposed. Imagine it, a fresh beginning, but this time, you'd have all your current memories intact. A grand opportunity, don't you think? Beast Rain's head circled Jaehuan, a smug confidence radiating from him. This isn't the stuff of your world's novels, he declared. I'm offering you the chance to become the absolute being who could begin this game anew. Jaehuan was floored, feeling a hollow realization settle in his chest. Wasn't it supposed to be over? He'd conquered the tower, yet now it felt as if everything had been for nothing. Then, another notification appeared on his screen, its message as jarring as it was cruel. Congratulations. You've been chosen as a tower walker to save the world. Do you accept the summons? It hit him like a bolt of lightning. He had been deceived all along. The tower, this endless climb, none of it had been about saving humanity. The truth was grimmer than he could have imagined. There was never any real hope of halting the tower's impact on the world. All he could do was continue climbing, battling, endlessly, in the hollow pursuit of a salvation that had been nothing more than a cruel illusion from the start. That's it for today. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more. We'll see you in the next one.